Have you ever, stopped to think about just how much of your life is digital now? Your work stuff, photos, I mean, everything online. And what if it just vanished? Or maybe worse, got into the wrong hands? It's a bit scary, right? And the exact worry, well, it's fueling this absolutely massive market. So today, we're doing a deep dive into this fast-moving world of data protection and recovery solutions. Yeah, and our insights, they're coming from key bits of the global data protection and recovery market. 2021-2033 outlook. It's from Cognitive Market Research. Our mission, really, is to look past just the big numbers. We want to unpack the growth that's expected, check out the different regional dynamics, which are actually pretty fascinating, and ultimately understand what this booming market really means for all of us, whether you're just using your phone or you're part of some huge global company. Okay, let's get into it.
Absolutely. And it's really about grasping the sheer scale, the magnitude of the shift. We're not just seeing small changes here and there. It's more like a fundamental transformation in how, the world thinks about keeping its digital stuff safe and accessible. The report basically paints a picture of a market that's becoming, well, essential, like a backbone for the whole digital economy.
Okay, let's start with that big picture then, because the growth scale you mentioned, it sounds pretty eye-opening. The global market was already at, what, $3.783 billion back in 2021? That's not small change. But what are the forecasts saying? Like, where are we headed over the next, say, 10 years or so?
Well, what's fascinating isn't just the starting point, but how steady and strong the growth is projected to be. So starting from that $3.783 billion in 2021, it's expected to hit $6.877 billion by 2025.
Okay, almost double in just 4 years.
Exactly. And then, hold on, it just skyrockets. We're talking $22.732 billion projected by 2033. That represents a global compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of 16.12%.
16% CAGR globally.
Yeah. And what that tells you, that 16% year-over-year growth, is that this is a deep, ongoing demand. It's not some, temporary blip. It's foundational.
Wow. Okay, yeah, more than 5 times bigger in, what, 12 years? That kind of steady, strong growth, it really hammers home how critical this whole area is becoming everywhere. It's clearly not just about, like, recovering your files after a computer crash anymore, is it?
Not at all. It's ransomware protection. It's guarding against simple human mistakes. It's compliance. It's everything.
Right. So where is this growth actually, concentrated? Let's break it down by region. Maybe start with North America.
Okay, North America. It's traditionally been a powerhouse in tech, and it still leads here. In 2021, that region pulled in $1.498 billion. That's projected to climb to $2.679 billion in 2025, and then expand out to about $8.570 billion by 2033. So it keeps a really strong CAGR, around 15.65%.
15.65%. Still very strong, even for a mature market.
Exactly. And it's not just more data. It's things like the big shift to cloud-native backups. Plus, the regulatory environment there is complex, always changing, pushing for stricter data rules.
Okay, so North America is leading, but what about inside North America? The U.S. obviously has a massive digital economy. How does this growth look specifically?
Yeah, the U.S. is naturally the heavyweight within North America. Its revenues are set to go from $1.201 billion in 2021 up to $6.782 billion by 2033. That's a CAGR of 15.51%, so very steady, strong growth.
And what pushing that in the U.S. particularly?
Well, you've got huge companies constantly upgrading their IT. Plus, I think there's just a much higher awareness now of cyber threats, ransomware, data breaches, you name it. But don't count out Canada and Mexico either. Canada goes from about $180 million to over $1.1 billion by 2033. That's a 16.36% CAGR. And Mexico, starting smaller at around $117 million, is projected to reach $682 million, growing at nearly 16% too. So it's a continent-wide push for, well, data resilience.
That really is robust growth across the board there. Okay, let's hop across the Atlantic. Europe. It's got its own mix, right? Established industries, but also lots of digital innovation. What's the story there?
Europe shows a similarly impressive path. The market was about $820.9 million in 2021. It's expected to hit $1.458 billion in 2025, and then climb to $4.660 billion by 2033. The CAGR there is very close to North America's, actually, at 15.63%.
15.63%, okay.
And what's really interesting, or maybe defining, about Europe is the impact of regulations like GDPR.
Ah, right, General Data Protection Regulation.
Exactly. That really forces organizations, it forces them to invest seriously in proper data protection and recovery. It goes way beyond just basic disaster recovery planning. It's about privacy, consent, the whole package.
That makes perfect sense. So within Europe, are there specific countries really driving things? Maybe because because of their industries or how they're applying those regulations?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Germany is a major player. It's projected to grow from around $161 million to nearly $1 billion, $983.3 million to be exact by 2033. That's a 16.41% CAGR.
Higher than the European average. Why Germany?
Well, think about its huge industrial base. Manufacturing, engineering, they're heavily into Industry 4.0, the whole smart factory thing. That generates enormous amounts of really critical data that just has to be protected. The UK is also very significant, growing strongly. France, too, seeing substantial expansion. But it's broad. Italy, Spain, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, even places like Russia and Luxembourg show solid growth. It just shows that across Europe, protecting digital assets isn't just like a good idea anymore. It's fundamental for business continuity.
It really drives home how universal this trend is, doesn't it? It's not just one or two places. And speaking of global reach, okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Asia Pacific. That region's known for just incredibly fast digital growth. How does it look in this specific market?
Yeah, Asia Pacific or APAC, it's a standout. Definitely the region to watch closely. Its revenues are predicted to grow from about $938 million in 2021.
Okay, starting a bit behind Europe and North America back then.
Right, but look where it's going. It's expected to hit a really remarkable $6.251 billion by 2033. And check this out. That growth is driven by a CAGR of 17.13%.
17.13%. That's the highest regional rate we've seen so far.
It is. It's the highest globally. And this isn't just, economies growing. It reflects this massive leapfrog effect in digital adoption. You have huge populations, entire businesses coming online, often mobile first. This creates just unprecedented volumes of data, and all of it needs protecting urgently.
That is a seriously impressive growth rate. So within APAC, given how diverse it is, which countries are really pushing that number up, and with particularly aggressive growth?
India really jumps out. It actually has the highest projected country-level CAGR in the world. Yeah, it's expected to grow from about $144.5 million in 2021 to over $1 billion, $1.050 billion by 2033. That's an almost 18% CAGR, 17.99%.
Incredible. What's behind that in India?
Well, think about it. Massive population, internet access is exploding, huge IT and services sector. It's just creating this immense need for data security. China is another absolute giant here. It's projected to go from roughly $276 million to almost $1.9 billion, with a CAGR over 17% as well, fueled by its vast digital economy, rapid move to the cloud. But it's not just them. Japan shows strong, steady growth. South Korea, too. Australia. And look at Singapore growing at over 17.5%. It's leveraging its role as a major digital hub. Even the broader Southeast Asia region, Taiwan, they all show CAGRs well above the global average. It really underscores this rapid digital maturing happening right across APAC.
Okay, so we've covered the big three, North America, Europe, and that high-flying Asia-Pacific region. But you said it's a universal trend. What about the rest of the world? South America, Middle East, Africa?
Yeah, absolutely universal. The need is everywhere. South America, for instance, shows robust growth. Its market is expected to grow from around $230 million to over $1.4 billion by 2033. That's a CAGR of 16.45%.
Also above the global average.
Right. Brazil is a big driver there, expected to hit nearly $500 million. Argentina also shows very strong growth, actually exceeding 17% CAGR. It reflects that increasing digital maturity across the continent. Then you have the Middle East, growing from $151 million to almost $936 million. Again, a solid CAGR, around 16.4%. Countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE are particularly strong, often driven by these huge national digital transformation plans, trying to diversify their economies beyond oil and gas. Turkey also shows strong growth.
Makes sense. And Africa?
Africa, too. Starting from a smaller base, around $144 million in 2021, but projected to reach nearly $878 million by 2033. That's a CAGR of 15.7%. South Africa leads the way there, expected to grow from about $59 million to over $380 million, with a CAGR over 16%. As digital connectivity improves across Africa, the need for data security just naturally follows. So, yeah, it's clear. Wherever data exists and is being used, protecting it becomes absolutely critical. And if we try to, connect the dots here, what all these numbers, region by region, are really screaming is that data protection. It's not a simple one-size-fits-all issue, and it's definitely not a luxury anymore. It's essential. The report really stresses this point. Decision makers, whether they're running a local startup or a huge multinational, they have to understand the regional nuances, things like local market dynamics, specific regulations like GDPR, or there's even how mature the cloud infrastructure is in a particular country. It all matters.
Okay, so let's bring this back to you, our listener. What does all this actually mean? Well, this really strong, consistent growth we're seeing literally everywhere signifies a deep, fundamental, and rapidly growing need for these data protection and recovery tools. It's not just something for giant tech firms or governments anymore. It affects every single industry: healthcare, finance, manufacturing, shops, you name it. And ultimately, it touches your personal digital life too. Think about it: your photos, your bank details online, your work files saved in the cloud. All that stuff relies on these kinds of solutions working behind the scenes. So as the report highlights, understanding these different regional factors is vital for businesses wanting to compete. And for you, it just underscores how valuable, but also how vulnerable your own digital footprint is becoming. That's why you hear so much more about cybersecurity, why there are more tools, more services popping up every day. It really is incredible just seeing that consistent, pervasive growth for data protection and recovery everywhere. It just highlights how our digital information has become, well, one of our most valuable assets, but maybe also one of our most vulnerable at the same time.
Absolutely. And it leads to a final thought, maybe something for you to chew on. Given this huge ongoing expansion, what do you think the next big thing will be in data protection? What's the next major innovation? Could it be like AI that automatically detects and fixes data issues? Or maybe something totally different, like a new way for us to own and control our personal data? And more importantly, how might that next leap forward affect you directly? How could it make your digital life safer, more resilient, maybe in ways we can't even quite imagine right now?
Okay, so let's dive in. You hear the term data protection thrown around a lot, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it sounds a little, I don't know, technical, maybe even a bit dry.
Yeah, definitely gets that reputation sometimes.
But what if we told you it's actually one of the most dynamic, critical, and frankly, pretty exciting areas for businesses right now?
It really is. It's moving so fast.
So this deep dive, it's all about unpacking the evolving dynamics shaping the global data protection and recovery solution market. It's super urgent, really important for anyone who uses or relies on digital information.
Which is pretty much everyone these days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to kind of give you a shortcut. We want you to understand why robust data protection isn't just some IT chore anymore. It's actually core strategy for survival, for growth. We're going to explore the key forces, what's driving growth, what's holding things back, and the big trends that are transforming this whole space, giving you the real nuggets.
And what's really fascinating here, I think, is that as organizations everywhere become more data-driven, intensely data-driven,
Right. The need for secure, efficient, and intelligent data protection. It's not just growing. It's becoming absolutely non-negotiable.
like table stakes.
Pretty much. It's moved way past being just a necessary evil or, ticking a compliance box. It's now a vital competitive differentiator.
How so?
Well, businesses that get this right aren't just dodging disasters. They're ensuring business continuity. They're building real customer trust and laying the groundwork for long-term growth in a way that, frankly, others just can't keep up with.
Okay, so let's unpack that. When we talk about companies pouring resources into data protection, what's the main catalyst? What's the biggest push behind all this investment?
The most significant force, it's undoubtedly the alarming rise in cyber attacks and just the sheer explosion of data.
Right, we hear about breaches all the time.
Exactly. But it's not just the number of attacks. It's their escalating sophistication and the sheer velocity of data growth. It's fundamentally changing the game.
Changing how? We're talking about a security landscape where, human defenders alone are increasingly outmatched. They're facing this continued proliferation of ransomware, relentless phishing, frequent, really complex data breaches.
Wow. So it sounds like it's not just guarding against like a specific hacker,
Yeah.
but also wrestling with the overwhelming amount of information itself.
Precisely.
Do those two things kind of feed off each other?
Absolutely. Think about it. This exponential growth in both structured and unstructured data, especially as hybrid and multi-cloud setups become the norm, well, that just means more points of vulnerability, more assets to protect.
Right.
So yeah, these challenges are deeply intertwined. It's about protecting against loss from, malicious attacks, but also just managing these immense, sprawling digital assets that are constantly growing. Robust backup and recovery, absolutely non-negotiable now.
Okay. And beyond the direct threats, there's also a pretty powerful legal and ethical side to this, isn't there? It's not just what companies want to do, but what they actually have to do.
That's spot on. The stringent regulatory and compliance environment, that acts as a massive catalyst.
Like GDPR?
Exactly. Think GDPR in Europe, high pay in the US, and, various other data privacy frameworks popping up globally. Businesses are now legally mandated to ensure real-time data integrity and, crucially, rapid recovery if there's a breach.
And the penalties can be huge, right?
Staggering sometimes. So, yeah, this isn't just a friendly suggestion. It's a non-negotiable mandate, and it has real teeth.
So what does that mean for actual adoption rates? Are companies actually, stepping up?
It means these compliance mandates are directly prompting increased adoption, especially of automated, policy-driven data protection tools. You see it particularly in sensitive sectors like finance, healthcare, public infrastructure.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because in those areas, data breaches don't just mean fines. They can absolutely decimate customer trust, have severe operational impacts, even societal consequences sometimes. It really transforms data protection from maybe a cost center into a critical risk mitigation necessity.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting. For me, the way we work has changed so dramatically. How has this huge shift to remote and hybrid work fundamentally reshaped data protection, like pushed it beyond the old server room?
Oh, it's created an entirely new imperative. Completely. As these decentralized workplaces keep growing, protecting endpoints, individual laptops, phones, and all those distributed workloads outside the traditional office firewall, that's become absolutely critical.
The attack surface just got way bigger.
Massively bigger. So it's no longer just about the main data center or server room. Now every coffee shop, every home office, every co-working space, that's potentially part of the perimeter that needs defending.
Wow, that's a huge mental shift.
It is. And this shift has directly fueled demand for things like cloud-native backup, disaster recovery as a service to RIAs, and really robust endpoint protection.
Yeah.
It's all about ensuring operational resilience, no matter where the work is actually happening. It's like creating a virtual security bubble around every employee and device.
Okay, so we've got these really compelling reasons to invest. Huge threats, legal mandates, the way we work now. You'd think every business would be buttoned up tight.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but the reality is there are still some pretty big barriers holding companies back. So what are those critical challenges? What's stopping them?
Well, one of the foremost barriers, especially for companies maybe already stretched a bit thin, is just the high cost involved.
Right, the budget.
Yeah, deploying a secure, enterprise-grade data protection framework. It takes significant upfront investment, infrastructure, software licenses, and, this is key, skilled IT staff to actually manage it all day to day.
And that sounds especially tough for smaller and medium-sized businesses, right? It feels like a catch-22.
It absolutely is. They face basically the same threats as the giants, but often with just a fraction of the budget.
So they get stuck.
Yeah, SMEs often find these costs prohibitive. And that, unfortunately, delays these really crucial digital defense transitions. They're forced into difficult trade-offs, sometimes leaving them, more vulnerable than they'd like to be.
Okay, cost is one thing, but many companies aren't starting fresh, right? They've got existing systems, sometimes old ones. How do those legacy systems fit into this modern puzzle?
Yeah, that's another big one. Integration with legacy systems is a real sticking point.
Like trying to fit old tech with new tech.
Pretty much. Many businesses really struggle to align their existing on-premise infrastructure, which might be decades old, seriously, with newer cloud environments. It's like trying to integrate a vintage engine with a brand new electric car.
That doesn't sound easy.
Yeah.
And that must create gaps, right? Blind
Yeah,
spots.
exactly. Trying to ensure seamless policy enforcement across these diverse, often incompatible systems. It's slow, it's technically complex, and it's incredibly resource-heavy.
So you end up with inconsistency.
You often do. Inconsistent data protection layers, significant potential vulnerabilities, and they can be really hard to spot until it's too late.
Okay, so we have cost, we have legacy integration. What about the market itself, the companies selling these solutions? Is it getting crowded?
Oh, definitely. The space is marked by really intense competition. Market saturation, even in some areas.
Who are the main players?
Well, you've got the massive established giants like AWS, Microsoft, IBM, but they're competing right alongside these really agile, innovative startups. Everyone's vying for a slice of the pie.
So innovation must be key to surviving. but it sounds like a really tough fight to stand out from the crowd.
Absolutely. Innovation has basically become the currency of survival in this market. Everyone's racing to offer the next best thing, the latest feature.
Hmm.
But this constant push for differentiation, it's squeezing margins, particularly for the smaller vendors, ones with maybe limited scalability. It just makes it harder for them to compete effectively against the resources of the big guys. It's a bit of a dog-eat-dog world out there.
Wow. Okay, so despite these pretty big challenges, cost, integration, competition, the market is also riding on some incredibly powerful trends. Things are still moving forward fast.
Oh, for sure.
So what's catching your eye? What innovations are genuinely transforming the landscape right now?
One of the most exciting trends, I think, is the emergence of AI-powered data protection.
AI and data protection, how does that work?
Well, solutions today aren't just reactive anymore. They're not just sitting there waiting for something bad to happen. They're becoming incredibly proactive, almost predictive.
Predictive, you mean like the system spotting a problem before it fully blows up?
Precisely that. Leveraging machine learning, advanced algorithms,
Yeah.
vendors are building these really intelligent frameworks. They can automatically detect anomalies, weird data access patterns, unusual behavior.
Wow.
They can isolate threats the moment they appear, and even maintain what are called air-gapped backups.
Air-gapped, meaning disconnected.
Exactly. Copies physically isolated from the network makes them virtually impervious to online attacks like ransomware. All this ensures real-time threat detection and significantly massively boosts recovery readiness. It really changes the game from just responding to actually anticipating threats.
Okay, that's a huge leap, definitely game changer. What else is picking up serious momentum?
Also, really on the rise is something called continuous data protection, or CDP.
CDP. Okay, how is that different from like traditional backups?
Well, traditional backups usually run periodically, right? Maybe once a day, maybe once an hour if you're lucky. CDP tools, though, they enable essentially real-time replication of data as changes happen.
So wait, you mean virtually no data loss between backups?
Yeah.
Even if system crashes like a minute after the last traditional save point?
That's the goal, yeah. Near zero data loss. It minimizes what we call recovery point objectives, or RPOs, meaning almost no data is lost between backup intervals.
Wow, where is that most valuable?
It's especially valuable in places like edge computing, where data is processed closer to the source, maybe on an IoT device or a factory floor, and definitely in multi-cloud environments. Anywhere where uptime is just absolutely business critical. It dramatically improves business continuity.
Okay, AI-powered protection, continuous data protection,
Yeah.
and cloud. Cloud's been a buzzword forever, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
But how is it specifically transforming data protection now? Moving beyond just being, a place to store stuff.
Right. So finally, we're just seeing massive adoption of cloud-native architectures specifically for data protection.
What does that look like in practice?
It covers everything from software as a service, SaaS-based platforms, through to backup as a service, BOSS, and disaster recovery as a service, DRaaS. Basically using the cloud as the protection mechanism.
Okay. And what's the big appeal there? Why are businesses of all sizes flocking to that? Is it just cost?
Cost is definitely a factor, sure, but it's really more than that. It's their flexibility, the built-in resilience you often get, the scalability that makes them incredibly attractive.
Less hardware to manage on-site, too.
Yeah, exactly. These solutions significantly reduce the burden of managing on-premise infrastructure. Plus, they enable really fast deployment and, crucially, cross-location disaster recovery capabilities much more easily. It just aligns perfectly with modern enterprise needs agility, distributed operations.
Makes sense.
And it sort of democratizes access, It gives smaller companies access to sophisticated protection that maybe only the largest enterprises could afford before.
So if we tie all this together, connect it to the bigger picture, it sounds like the data protection and recovery market isn't just about ticking boxes or avoiding fines anymore.
Not at all. It's truly transitioning, moving from being that compliance checkbox we talked about to being a critical competitive differentiator, strategic asset, really.
Right.
Which raises a really important question, I think. What does this shift actually mean for businesses looking ahead? Not just thinking defensively, but maybe thinking about opportunity.
Okay, so let's bring it back to you, the listener. What does all this mean for you? Well, it seems pretty clear that organizations that proactively adopt these newer strategies, the AI-driven tools, the cloud-native approaches, the truly resilient setups, they aren't just safeguarding their information anymore. They're actually ensuring uninterrupted business continuity. They're building much deeper customer trust, And they're laying a really robust foundation for long-term growth and innovation.
Absolutely. It becomes an enabler.
Yeah. So maybe take a second and just consider how utterly dependent you or your organization are on data day to day. Given everything we've just explored, the threats, the trends, how might a more robust, more intelligent data protection strategy not just protect your work or the companies you interact with, but actually propel it into the future? It's not just about what you manage to keep safe, but maybe what that safety then frees you up to create. Something to think about.